taking risks. It's what drives us. It's what pushes me to jump out of planes and off buildings. And it's what pushes business founders and entrepreneurs to seek out and forge new paths. This show is all about how the leaders of every corner of the business world identify, assess, prepare, and overcome risk, turning their greatest challenge into their greatest reward. We're Jeb and Ziggy Corliss. This is Taking the Lead. Smells delicious, right, Ziggs? Ziggs loves JINX Pet Food more than any food I've given her. It's also nutritious. We're so focused on what we put in our bodies, shouldn't we use the same TLC for our pets? As JINX, the premium pet food company, says, pets are our family. Today I'm sitting down with JINX co-founder Terri Rockovich. We'll learn how JINX products stand out in the premium pet food market. The story of JINX begins with Terri and her rescue dog, Blitz. For Terri, pets are best friends, travel companions, and confidants. Blitz moved with Terri cross-country from Philadelphia to San Francisco. He's seen her through many leaps in life. When Blitz developed back issues, Terri sought any and every way to help heal him, and she knew nutrition would be a key component. However, she soon realized that the pet food industry was not putting animal nutrition first. This sparked an idea. Could she start a pet food brand that centered around animal health and wellness? And so, her leap began. JINX is determined to up-level the pet food industry by creating products that provide holistic nutrition with all-natural, science-backed formulas to pets. JINX prioritizes science-based research in pet nutrition. Their kibble is packed with clean, whole, protein-dense food and probiotics, meaning JINX kibble is healthy for your dog and good for the world. Ziggy, little dude, what do you think? Is it time to meet Terri and learn about JINX? Hello, Terri. Welcome to the show, and thank you for your time. I can't wait to hear about your story and everything that you've gone through to get to where you are right now. So I know that you have been in digital marketing since before digital marketing was even cool, like back in the MySpace days. So tell me about your kind of origin, like how your career went, what you've done since you left college, like what happened to you?
I've been in the digital strategy space for some time, let's call it. Definitely over a decade, but not 2 decades. I started my career at an agency, and the agency was primarily focused on managing digital strategy for Fortune 500 companies. And so I was really, as a super junior, JV person, put on a bunch of accounts. And I really just kind of built some muscle around figuring out how to work with any size budget for clients with really strict brand guidelines, and then clients that had like no idea what they were doing. I think it really set the tone for the foundation of some digital strategic education. And then I jumped to the brand side and really kind of started what became this back-to-back experience of working for early stage companies. And so I first went to a brand called ModCloth, and they are a vintage apparel reseller, and they had, kind of started in Pittsburgh, PA, and found really great traction and success, raised some money from the VC community, and then really kind of had this hockey stick growth. I had joined just prior to the Series A, and so I was an early employee, had this opportunity to relocate from Pittsburgh, where I was born and raised, to San Francisco.
When you moved, did you have family in the new area, friends, or were you moving to a whole new, completely different area for you?
Oh, it was completely new, but it really kind of made me uncomfortable. And I think discomfort often indicates growth. And it's actually where I adopted my first rescue as an adult. And was fully responsible for like managing him and all of his care, which is why we're here today, frankly. But he was my number one confidant and like my homie. He came to bars, he came to restaurants, he came to work. He actually facilitated a lot of friendships and relationships, because when you have a cute dog, everyone wants to talk to you. And so he really kind of warmed up a lot of people in and outside of my professional environment. And because he was so socialized, he just became this really friendly, outgoing dog. He came to work with me every single day. We worked in a startup environment that was dog friendly. I was there for 4 years, just kind of hustling. In those 4 years was probably when I encountered like the most confusion in terms of figuring out how to care for him, because he had so many health issues, which ranged from just like really itchy and sensitive skin to UTIs, which are entirely uncommon for dogs. He had a sensitive tummy. He had like lipomas, which are like these big fatty tumors, but it's like he had one health issue after the next. And as you can imagine, working for a startup where you're like in early, out late, it was really kind of scary and terrifying and frustrating, frankly, to figure out how to make sure he was okay and make sure I could care for him, but then also balance my career.
How old was he when you got him?
He was a year old, and then we were together for 4 years. So he was about 5 years old when we relocated to New York, where I actually met my co-founders and started working for CASPER, the mattress in a box company. And so they were kind of part of this, like, I always call it like the class of like the mid 2000s, in that they were an early direct to consumer brand. VC funded, that launched and just became kind of a unicorn in the e-commerce space, and that they popped and they grew so fast. My co-founders and I were all founding employees, really early stage. So we saw that kind of grow and had the opportunity to ride what really became a rocket ship.
So you met your new co-founders in JINX while working at CASPER.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, tell me a little bit about them. Tell me about your co-founders.
Yeah. So they're like brothers in addition to being business partners. As you can imagine, our relationships is so dynamic. It's like we wear so many hats, because it's like we're hanging out on weekends and socializing with the same group of people, but then we show up on Monday and like have to energize a team and really make sure that we're aligned and on the same page. And frankly, really focused. We still have a really small team. And so we've got 3 founders and 10 employees. And with that, it's just like we make up such a large part of the team, and we're still actively engaged because we're all operators. It's just really important that the relationship is healthy and strong, and we're communicative, and there's a lot of trust. And I think we had so much opportunity to build that before we launched our own company together.
Okay. I've heard that you consider yourself like dog obsessed. Did you guys have a connection with animals with each other? Is that kind of what got you guys to communicate and talk? And were animals any part of your guys' friendship?
Absolutely. So I've always been an animal lover, to the degree that obsession is a very accurate word, because it was like I'd bring in cats, I'd find dogs. I also had a turtle, I had rats, I had ferrets. Like I had a snake. My dad really decided that he needed to draw a line when I brought a snake home. I've always been an animal lover. I had my first rescue as an adult, living with me. And when I had to travel, I couldn't ask my parents to kind of make the haul from Pittsburgh every time. And so because I trusted Michael so much, he was watching my dog all of the time, every time I traveled. Between the 3 of us, we had dogs that were different breeds at different life stages of different sizes. And we definitely came together and bonded on that, because there was always food drama. And I would say my dog, because he had so many health issues, definitely kind of had the most. But we definitely had this shared experience where, regardless of the dog and its breed and its age, we just had a really hard time finding a food that the dog liked, that didn't upset its stomach. We kind of came together and we had all of this kind of shared trouble in finding and identifying a food. And so when we graduated CASPER and we were kind of think tanking on what we wanted to do, because we had been inspired to start our own business and be entrepreneurs, the pet category felt like the right one, in that it was a pure passion point. Furthermore, and more importantly, we can't find a consistent diet to put our dogs on, because nothing is working. Dogs are dogs, right? And so it's like they should be incentivized to eat. Much like humans are. And so it did feel very confusing that we couldn't find an option, regardless of price, that would work for any of our animals. So we were truly inspired to carve out some white space, build a better brand with a modern approach to nutrition, and then also make sure it still had the ease and convenience functionality aspects, so that for a millennial pet parent that is working often or is really kind of committed to their professional trajectory, wouldn't kind of require so much meal prep or wouldn't take up so much space in our small apartment refrigerators. My dog actually, unfortunately, had like a very bad back injury when we were living in New York City. And then during his recovery and rehabilitation, had even more issues with food. So it was like I was actually cooking meals for him and he was refusing to eat chicken and rice and bone broth.
No.
And like, so that's when I was like, there has to be a better option out there. And when we couldn't find it, we were like, this is the idea.
How did you sort that out? I mean, did you bring scientists in and nutritionists to kind of figure out how to formulate the dog food so that the animals will actually like enjoy eating it?
So we spent a year effectively doing R&D, which included networking within the pet space and the pet industry. And so we identified a collection of people that we ended up engaging to be our nutrition council. And with that, we've got certified formulators, nutritionists, veterinarians, and manufacturing experts that really kind of advise and oversee everything from research and testing through production, manufacturing, and distribution. While we learned a lot and kind of like quite literally figured out how the sausage gets made and arrived at a nutrition philosophy that felt like a higher standard than what was in the bags on our current shelves. We worked with the team to kind of validate at every point in the process and really make sure that like the right filters were in place from a product quality perspective, to make sure that, you know, what was going in bags was something that we would be proud of and then something we would also feed our own fur babies. And I know exactly what we sent you, and the salmon diet, it's very fishy, and the salmon topper is very fishy, and that smell is so attractive to a dog.
I love it.
Yeah, the technical term is called acceptability, but the acceptability rates on our food are really high because that smell is so attractive to the animal's nose, and their sense of smell is so strong. Another thing that helps, just as like a little tip, is if you add a little bit of water, it enhances the smell even more and makes the dog even more attracted to the food. And water is like a really easy add.
So when did you guys make the decision to take the leap to literally start your own company? Like, where did that come from? Because you were talking a little bit about you met each other at Casper, you became friends, you then kind of went off on your own ways for a little bit. Then what made you guys come back together and decide, hey, let's start a company together?
So my co-founder Samir is a hustler. And so he went out and started kind of hosting really kind of passive conversations to see if there was interest in incubating the idea or funding the idea. And he worked with a designer to build a deck. And he put it in front of me. And not only was I entirely impressed, but I was like, this is the project that I want. Like, this is the project that I want to commit the next decade of my life to. When we kind of saw the deck and you know, finessed it a bit, we went out and we started fundraising just to get a sense of the appetite and the climate in the market. And we had, over 70 conversations. Like, there were phone calls every single day. There were a lot of rejections and a lot of no's. Every no came with a piece of constructive feedback that helped us kind of make the pitch a little bit tighter.
And develop it better.
Yeah, and develop it better. And then we, you know, definitely found the right kind of synergy between the co-founders in terms of pitching and who was equipped to speak to which piece of the business. We got better over time. There was this really beautiful arc in terms of our fundraising experience. And I would say, like, we found our lead towards the end of that experience, who was energized by what we wanted to build and the potential significance of, you know, an e-commerce or direct-to-consumer model, with a food that was kind of premium, shelf stable, and retail ready. But then also just believed in the team. And I think that, like, anytime you give founders confidence that they're capable of doing the impossible, it's like lighting a fire. And so it was great. And my co-founders, I mean, like, they're so supportive, and our skill sets are very complementary of one another. And so it's really nice because we have a lot of coverage in terms of all of the functions within a business.
I read that Will Smith became one of your initial investors. How did that come about? How would you even meet him? How would you even approach someone like him?
Once you start to have so many conversations, and this is why I think the influx of no's was only more motivating. Once you start to have an influx of conversations, then this demand and hype kind of starts to build, and the VC community is small. And so once people start hearing about Ex-Casper, founding employees, starting something new, we then started to receive some inbounds. And I think like with that halo effect, it was very incredible in opening up doors and relationships with people that we normally wouldn't have access to, of which Will's fund, which is called Dreamers, was an early conversation that really wanted to participate because his family they're huge animal lovers and advocates. And so really when we started thinking about adding high profile investments to our seed round of funding, the criteria was like, you have to be an authentic dog lover. And so it's like money is there. So who actually likes dogs and who actually enjoys what we're building and who's actually going to feed their dog JINX. And so that was kind of like this demand that started to build. And because it was there, we just leaned into it.
I find it interesting, the timing of you guys like developing this and then deciding to go to market, because you started developing in like 2018 and more in 2019, correct? Right before the pandemic struck. Absolutely.
Our formation experience was about 18 months from R&D through testing and production, and kind of the food arriving at a fulfillment center ready to distribute. And then we soft launched our brand in January of 2020, and we were kind of holding our breath. So we soft launched our brand in January of 2020. We didn't really put any marketing horsepower behind it because we wanted to make sure that the infrastructure and kind of the back end of the business was working properly. So we kind of had friends and family just like placing orders, giving us feedback in terms of what the delivery experience was like and how their dog was actually receptive to the product. And I actually took a trip to New York City at the beginning of March. It was supposed to be this back-to-back experience of meeting with press and talking about our business and the marketplace and the opportunity and why we were doing what we were doing. And I would say like 70% of those meetings got canceled. And then the conversations I did have were great. And I think there was a lot of receptivity and engagement there, but the reporters were literally like, real talk, there's this thing coming. And there's also like a big politics scheme. So this news is probably not going to be able to compete with that cycle. And so I flew back to LA early and we were just like, let's launch this. And then let's evolve our go-to-market playbook a bit, focus on digital only growth and activations and digital partnerships. And start to kind of like build some momentum in a more limited scope. And so that's kind of what we did.
I mean, it seems like during a pandemic like this, where things start shutting down, you can't go into stores anymore. I mean, people are literally buying online. It seems like your product is almost positioned quite well. It seems like, could it have actually benefited you or brand a little bit? The fact that people could buy it from home and that's how it was set up?
Yeah, you know what? I'll say this. There were tailwinds for our business, and we bet on the right model, that being direct-to-consumer e-commerce, because the behavior had already existed, but it became really sticky in the pandemic where people started to buy their staples online, and then really be attracted to the idea that some of the heavy stuff that you were used to buying in store and lugging home on the train or lugging home in your car if you were lucky enough was no longer really a requirement. And then I think, the silver lining of the pandemic was, and this made the news a lot, like all of these shelters and homeless animals were rescued and people's homes expanded. And in some cases, there was a lot of new pet ownership. And so all of those trends obviously impact the category. Spending was up and kind of hit a new record and a new milestone in 2020. And those trends continue to stick as we move into 2021. And so all of those have this halo effect on our business.
So you're obviously know a lot more about digital marketing than I do. And I've seen like in your writing a little bit, something you call IRL. Could you explain like what that is and what it means and how it's going to like for you, what that means for you moving forward in your brand?
So as a classically trained performance marketer, I had kind of learned how to architect a media strategy through this funnel and kind of putting together a collection of media initiatives that address the bottom of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, and the top of the funnel, And what I found as being this really nice connective tissue between all types of media is IRL experiences. So in real life experiences where you might not have as much reach to affect so many people, but the people you do affect have this kind of really memorable experience with the brand because you've done something that's an extra special touch, or you've activated with them in person. We had designed this playbook that we were so excited to kind of transact against because we had all of these really fun doggy events. We hold the responsibility to choose food for someone who cannot choose for themselves.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of like, how do we flip that on its head? And I think like the true mark of product quality is really by having an animal eat something and enjoy it and then digest it. And so we were like, this feels like a really cool thing to do. We'll start it in LA and then we'll start to kind of activate in other cities in the United States. And we never had the opportunity to do it, but it's still a part of our playbook and something we fully intend to do once it becomes safe.
So what are you looking at for JINX in the future? Like where are you planning to go? I mean, what is your like focus for growth? Like where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So we are building a brand that will become the single destination for all things doggy consumables. We have a deep, deep desire to put better products on shelves and make them more attainable for the average pet parent. And so we first want to ensure that we build a really tight direct-to-consumer machine, which is through e-commerce and through our website, which allows anyone, frankly, to come and sign up and get their box every month and kind of build that box and tailor it to their animal. We want to own the pantry. And so everything that your dog is eating, really, we want to create a system for. And so that's the base diet. It's anything that you would put on top of the base diet to make it more attractive. That won't necessarily be implicative to their digestive process. It's treats, it's functional treats like dental chews. Functional treats, whether they're intended for oral care or whether they're intended to help things like an aging dog's arthritis, are really important. And if you're going to treat anyway, it feels really nice that it can be serving a purpose, a functional purpose as well.
Before you go, I want to ask you, if you met someone who's an entrepreneur and they're deciding, hey, I want to start my own company, I want to do my own thing, what would be one of your suggestions to them when they're coming at that like seeding process of thinking like, how would I do this myself? What advice would you give them? I
went on a hike last night with a very good girlfriend who's launching a business. And she was kind of saying how she's being driven mad by all of the decisions. They're almost paralyzing because there's so many to make. Yeah. And what I told her was the decision doesn't have to be perfect. And if you oscillate or spin on a decision, you usually end up arriving at the original decision anyway, and you just killed like weeks or days. And so my biggest piece of advice to entrepreneurs is just make decisions, launch, collect real data points instead of just like sitting in a room and hypothesizing or debating with your co-founders. Make the decision, collect real data points, and kind of iterate very fast and keep it moving, because you could debate things till the end of time. And really, like, time is money and every day counts. And so it's really like to be decisive and be focused and use your intuition and your gut, obviously, but put things out into the world and use real data points to optimize them.
So I have to ask, is JINX planning on developing tortoise food?
We have not, but I could always pitch it in one of the product development meetings. You never know.
I want to thank you for coming. Thank you for being here and meeting my family and letting us all know about your story. I think it's very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting me. It was so nice meeting you.
It was nice meeting you too. Terri, thank you again. JINX's commitment to creating clean, functional, and nutritious pet food is impressive. It took a big leap to take JINX from concept to competitive brand in the packed pet food marketplace. However, I'm not surprised, as your product is light years ahead of the game. All right, Ziggy and I are on to our next adventure, another walk. What a big leap we're taking. Huh, Ziggs? Until next time, keep tuning in to learn more about how founders and entrepreneurs are taking the leap, only on Shopflix.